Thanks, Ranjit. Hello, Anaga. And now the whole idea of humor at a time like this in COVID times and everyone very serious. First of all, brings us to the basic question: is why should we laugh? Let's go right down to the basics. Why is it necessary for us to laugh? In our physiology days, we learned of these small little protein molecules called endorphins. And whenever you do several tasks, like pleasurable tasks, like helping someone cross the street, you release some endorphins. And when you laugh, you release a hell of a lot of more endorphins than helping someone cross the street. Helping someone cross the street can get you killed also. But laughing so far has not a very high fatality rate. So the reason to laugh is that you release endorphins. When you release endorphins, you tend to live longer. So it is possible that you live to be 200 or 300 years of age if you do laugh. Now, the issue is that many people say that, it's all right on a one-to-one, but I can't really crack jokes in public, or I freeze during that time. So that's again not true. Again, taking the endorphin story, it is not necessary that your jokes are great. It is not necessary that your audience laughs at the jokes. If they laugh at their jokes, at your jokes, it releases their endorphins and they live longer. But man is a selfish animal. You need to develop the ability to laugh at your own jokes. That means you say a joke and then you laugh. When you laugh at the end of the joke, your endorphins are released, you live longer. It doesn't matter whether the opposite person's endorphins are released or not. That is his problem if he doesn't want to laugh. So it is not necessary that your joke is appreciated. Of course, there are few do's and don'ts about jokes. To get your jokes appreciated, please, there are some caveats. Never practice your jokes or never try them in front of spouse. Because your spouse is already convinced that you have not a single funny bone in your body and you're anything but humorous. And stop giving these ghatia jokes and trying to make me laugh. It's not funny at all. These are the sort of things you get, whether it's a spouse of 1 year or whether it's a spouse of, like in my case, almost 40 years. It's the same. Actually, when I was courting Sajida, my wife, I tried to impress her and I took her for a walk in Hanging Gardens, and then I cracked joke after joke. And then at the end of it, I asked her, well, what do you think of me? And she says, you're a nice guy, you seem to be a good man, good human being, you do a lot of social service and things like that. You seem to be a decent, you're studying to be an ophthalmologist. Of course, she didn't pronounce it properly. But the only thing I don't like about you is your sense of humor. So I came home and I told my sister, I said, yeah, dal galne wali nahi hai. I have to use a lot of social pressures and others to get married in spite of that. So never try jokes on your spouse. Ideal audience is if you are old enough like me to try it on grandchildren before the age of 10. After that, they become wise and stop laughing at your jokes. Otherwise, your neighbor's children, neighbor's grandchildren, which is fine, you can do that, but no spouse and no child above the age of 10. The teenage group is very bad because they will insult you on your face and think nothing of it. So how does one start being funny? Start with short jokes. Like you tell someone, did you hear the one about the blonde who won the chess tournament? And then laugh. Because only then will that person understand that the joke is over. Did you hear the one about the blonde who won the chess tournament? She is blonde, she is a little dumb, she couldn't have won it. So that's the end of the joke. That person initially will not get it, but you laugh. So you release your endorphins, you practice your joke. That fellow will go home in the evening and realize what a stupid joke it was. The second thing I learned about cracking jokes is from a friend of mine called Dr. Vihang Vaya. He is a psychiatrist. So he had a very good hand grip. So the good thing is when you are learning this, go to the gym, lift weights, get a good hand grip. Because if you get a good hand grip like Bihang had, he met me in Bridge Candy Hospital, he would hold my hand and say, Kuresh, did you hear this one? It didn't matter if I had heard it or not. The hand grip would not be released. He had finished telling me this. Problem was he met me in 2 other hospitals, sometimes in 3 hospitals on the same day. So he met me in Bajekar Hospital. Kuresh, did you hear this one? He said, Vihang, you told me this in the morning. It didn't matter. The hand grip remained. I couldn't explain myself. He got his endorphins released the second time. So by the time, so he would practice just one joke every day, which he would tell to whoever he met. So by the evening, he was quite good. So one way to practice is to have a good hand grip. And then where does one find jokes? Jokes are really all around us. I remember first day of medical college in KEM, we had those halls which are those staircase like seating from down to up. We have 160 students, and the professor of physiology came out with this. What is it that dilates? What is it that expands to 5 times its size when excited? And a little girl from Latur, I remember in my class, must have been 16, 17. She got up and said, "Sir, I seriously object. I come from a small town, Latur, and we are very conservative. And my parents have sent me to this big city, Mumbai, and I don't think you can say such dirty things like this. And I am quite offended by this, and I will be complaining to the dean about this." So the physiology professor was not upset at all. He says, "Young lady, there are 3 things wrong in what you've just said. One is you've joined medicine and medical college. There is nothing dirty about the human body. Everything is clean, and you need to learn everything. The second thing is that I was referring to the pupil of the eye. And young lady, the third thing is you're going to be extremely disappointed when married." So these are some of the things you in medical college. I remember
5 times.
I was in I live in a building called Somerville on the 11th floor, and in the morning, as is my wont, I get up very early, 5 in the morning, and I put my hands out like that to thank God for the mercies of allowing me to stay alive one more day. And I was doing that and deep in prayer and in spirituality, and I found something suddenly fall into my hand, and I looked at it, and it was a glass eye. So I looked up and I saw that it was my neighbor in a transparent negligee, a pretty young thing, leaning from her balcony. And of course, by that time I was already a Rotarian, so it was fair to all concerned. Is one of the tests in Rotary. So I immediately ran up the stairs to her house, rang her bell, and said, "Ma'am, you've dropped this." She says, come in. My husband is not at home. What will you have? Tea, coffee, or?" And I chose the or option. And then one thing led to another until at about 8:30, I had to tell her, "Ma'am, I'm so thankful to you for all your hospitality, but I must leave because my anesthetist is waiting at my hospital." This is pre-COVID days, when we had anesthetists, we had surgery. Youngsters may not know these, but there was something like a pre-COVID era. So when I went, so then I told her, "But I have just one question to ask before I leave. Are you this hospitable to all your neighbors, or am I something special?" She says, "No, only to those who catch my eye." And that neighbor remained friends, as you might quite guess. But talking about eyes, I remember this. Once we were going by train from Mumbai to my hometown, which is Surat, and in the compartment there was myself and an elderly gentleman was reading his newspaper. So I decided to get a pally and chatted with him, asked him, "What you do for a living?" And he says, "Well, I normally make my money in placing bets and winning bets." So I said, "What kind of bets?" He says, "Well, for example, I can bet in those days 10 rupees that I can bite my eye." So I said, "Bite your eye? No one can bite their eye." So I said, "Okay, here's 10 rupees. Show me how you can bite your eye." So he took out his glass eye and he bit it. So I said, "I was fooled. I agree with you, but 10 rupees not much." He says, No. Then I go on to the second bet. Then I said, "I can bet, you can bet 100 rupees that I can bite my other eye." Now, I had seen him reading the newspaper. So I knew he was not blind. He could not be having 2 glass eyes. So I said, 100 rupees, TK, 100 rupees. How can you bite your second eye? So he took out his dentures and he bit the second eye. So the moral of the story is that when you're in trains, be very careful because there are all types of fraudsters abound. One time I remember traveling by train in Mumbai. For those who are from Mumbai, we have the Western Line, Central Line. So we were at a friend's place in the western suburbs, and we were coming towards Churchgate by train. That's the south of Mumbai. And in those days, the compartments, I'm talking about these 70s and 80s, the compartments are not very crowded. We were in a second-class compartment, 4 college students. And a pretty young thing came into the compartment. And she saw that all of us she was wearing a dress, and all four males were obviously staring at her legs. And she says, you know what, if all of you all put down 5 rupees, in those days it was a big sum, if all of you all put down 5 rupees, I will lift my skirt and show you my thighs. We were thrilled. All of us took out 5 rupees, and she lifted her skirt and actually showed us her thighs. And then the train went past a couple of stations, and still there was nobody coming in or out. And she saw that we were now ogling her thighs. So she says, you put down another 5 rupees, I will lift my skirt a little higher and show you my upper thighs. And we were sweating away, and liquids pouring all over the place. And we put another 5 rupees, and she lifted her skirt and showed us her upper thighs. And then a couple of stations rolled past, and nothing still, nobody entered or left. So then she saw that we were in a state of high excitement. She said, now if you put down 10 rupees, I'll show you where my appendix was removed. We were medical college students, so we know where the right iliac fossa is. And we were amazing anticipation we had. So we got our last remaining money, 10 rupees each, and put it there and waited for her. And then she pointed out to Saifi Hospital as it passed in the distance. That was where her appendix was removed. So I've been fooled often enough in the trains. So I am very wary now. My daughter is a dentist, dental surgeon, and some story she tells me from Nair Hospital, where she was in dental college. She says that at one time there was a patient she was looking at for a very large cavity. So she turned to him and says, you have a very large cavity. You have a very large cavity. So that patient says, look, ma'am, I heard you the first time. You don't have to repeat it. And she says, I wasn't repeating. It must have been the echo. And then she talks about a sweet young thing who was in the chair, and her professor was about to do a dental extraction. And she said, stop, I'm very nervous. I've heard that tooth extraction is very painful. It is even worse than sexual intercourse for the first time. And the professor wasn't Fazal. He says, lady, make up your mind so I can adjust the position of the chair. And once I'm hearing some. I'm hearing some. Can we have everyone on mute, Sai?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sai, can we have everyone on mute? Yeah. Okay. So then by and by, I did pass my exams, though not very easily. I remember one incident in the ophthalmology department, and there was a patient who had come there for refraction. I took a detailed history, and I said, what is wrong? He says, no, I see slightly blurred and occasional black spots I see, and I have an occasional headache. So I took him into the side room as a fresh 15-day-old houseman, and I took 1 hour to do his refraction, and I gave him 0.25 cylinder at 17 degrees. In those days, there were no auto refs, and I was very proud of my handiwork. A month later, he came again to the OPD, and I found him. I said, you are my first patient. Come. He says, no. I want to see somebody senior. I said, no, come. Tell me, how is the glasses? He says, well, doc, I come to you complaining of an occasional headache and a few spots. Now the headache is continuous, and a few spots have become multiple. So I realized that 0.25 at 17 degrees may not be the best formulas. In spite of that, after some time, gradually, all at first attempt, I did pass, and finally joined my father in practice. And I decided at that time that I should have my own secretary, because Dad had his secretary who had been with him 40 years. So I appointed a new secretary, a very pretty young thing. And I stood behind a pillar while she was chatting with the older secretary. And I heard her tell the older secretary, our boss is so handsome, so suave. So I was saying, wow, what a fantastic secretary, good opinion she has. He dresses so well, she said. And then the older secretary said, yes, and so quickly too. And then I was really not sure whom they were referring to. Talking about secretaries, we have this father-son combination currently practicing in Mumbai. I won't take names, they're in South Mumbai, but at one time when they were practicing together, both of them being Rotarians, of course, they employed a secretary, a pretty young thing. And as it happens because of biology and other factors, that pretty secretary became pregnant. And since both of them were Rotarians, they again decided to be fair to all concerned and decided that we must do something for her. So they went up to her, the father and son, and says, look, we are not sure which of us has caused this in your life, but we will be fair to you. We will see that your delivery is done in the best nursing home in the city, and you will have your child well taken care of till the age of 18, best school, best college, etc. She said, sir, that will be excellent. And they were true to their word, and she was admitted in the best nursing home. And the senior ophthalmologist couldn't stand it anymore, the suspense. So he told his son, you go up and check and see what's happening and come back and tell me. So the son came down and said, and the father says, what happened? He says, well, I've got good news and not so good news. He says, will you stop classifying things as an ophthalmologist? Tell me what happened. He says, well, she did deliver. He says, yes. And then what happened? He said, she delivered twins and my twin died. So that is how the division of responsibility takes place. Sometimes we don't take any names here. But speaking of secretaries, another time I was interviewing for a male secretary in my nursing home, and I had told all the candidates that please, I'll be asking similar questions. So when you go out, don't discuss with the others what questions I'd asked. But it is typical in human nature. So this guy came out from the interview, and all the other 5 or 6 guys who were standing there asked him, what did sir ask? He said, no, sir is very good, very fair. He asked wonderful questions, very easy questions. I answered everything right. I think the interview was going on very well till he asked me to show my testimonials, and I think I showed the wrong thing. You can understand that he was he wasn't employed finally, because little proficiency in language, should be there. So most of our nurses in Mumbai come from the deep south of India, and I was interviewing a nurse for our nursing home from the deep south, and I asked her to show me her testimonials, which she showed me, her certificates. Everything was fine, and she was well qualified, good experience. So I was very thrilled, because to get a qualified nurse in Mumbai is next to impossible. So I asked her, what salary would you expect? She said, no, sir, you tell, sir, you tell, sir. I said, no, you tell me. Because typical Guju mentality, if I can bring it down 5 rupees, much better. No, you tell me. She said, no, sir, you tell. So for some time, you tell, me tell, went on. And then finally, very blushingly, she came out with, sir, 7,000 rupees, sir. Now, 7,000 in Mumbai for a trained nurse is peanuts. I immediately jumped and I said, wonderful, with pleasure. She said, no, sir, with pleasure will be 25,000, sir. So I had to pause at that. These language issues sometimes get us into a lot of trouble, So when we are hiring, we are a little extra cautious sometimes. But this you no tell, me no tell reminds me of a story of this ophthalmologist in apartheid South Africa. So this ophthalmologist went from US and decided to do community service in a small rural town in South Africa. Now this is height of apartheid. So the town had only the small village-like thing, and only black natives or villagers there. He did excellent work, was doing well, skilled at his cataracts and everything. But after about 4 or 5 years, for the first time in the history of the village, a white child was born. Now the village head priest was extremely annoyed. He caught hold of this white ophthalmologist and told him, white child, black village, you responsible, I fry you in oil. So this white ophthalmologist was very upset. He tried to explain to this fellow about genetics and Mendelian theories and recessive genes and autosomal genes and things like that. He says, but that was a simple village chief. He was not getting it at all. He couldn't understand this. He was trying to tell him, sir, sometimes there is 7 peas and you can get 1 big pea, 1 small, something like that. But it was going bumper. This fellow says, I'm going to fry you in oil. Then this ophthalmologist saw a herd of sheep walking suddenly. And in that herd of sheep, they were all white sheep and there was 1 black sheep there. So he says, now I'll explain Mendelian laws to this guy. He says, priest, do you see that whole herd of white sheep and you see that 1 black sheep there? The priest says, yes. Okay. You no tell, me no tell. So he let it go at that. and the life of the ophthalmologist was saved. So generally, ophthalmologists are quick thinking people. Not so our nursing staff sometimes. I mean, I remember one of the first LASIKs that I did, and I told the nurse to hold the hand of the patient. He was a young man, 18, 20 years of age. I told him, hold the hand of the patient and calm him down because he was a little nervous. And the patient, I had done one eye, I was moving to the left eye, and the patient asked, nurse, is everything going all right? Sir, very good, sir. One eye finish. Now, sir will do other eye, he will finish. Finish means he thought that, you know. And nowadays we record our surgeries, but in the good old days when I was operating once in the operation theater, this patient was then wheeled out, and we have a practice of taking a little feedback from the patient. So the nurse goes afterwards and asks the patient, how was your experience in the theater? I normally put on soft music and things like that. I get rave reviews. And the patient said, everything was absolutely all right. It was going on well, but I don't like sir's use of 4-letter words in the theater. Now, I pride myself at not using 4-letter words ever. The F word and other things are never used by me, even in normal life, though I'm a married man. And I couldn't understand what 4-letter word. So I asked her to go back inside and ask the patient exactly what was the 4-letter word that he had used. She says, sir, I don't want to ask that. I feel shy to ask, so, but I insisted. So she went and asked, and it seems I had said oops. OOPS, oops. That must have been because I must have dropped the nucleus or something like that. And that's the 4-letter word that he found obnoxious. So we need to be very careful in our use of the vocabulary. I think we'll end with one for the road, as it were. This is a story from my, when we passed out our MBBS, there was a big wave, almost 30-40% of our students would go abroad. We had to pass this ECFMG and VQE exams, and then you could go to the US for greener pastures. So this friend of mine, Dr. Patel, he had gone over there and quickly made his billions over there, and then decided to come back to India and get married to a typical Gaonwali girl, because in those days they didn't like marrying the white Americans. They wanted to marry somebody from here. So typically his father had printed the wedding invitation card, leaving only the name blank to be filled in of the girl. He came here, saw 20 girls in about a week's time, selected one and got married, took her back to the US. Now this girl hardly knows this guy, but she goes there and it's the first week after marriage. And this fellow has a palatial house. In the US, you don't live in small flats like we do. They have palatial houses, something like what Rajesh and others have in Delhi. So they have homes with a porch and a first floor, ground floor, basement and things like that. So this fellow was living in one such house. And though it was the 80s, he had got some big gizmos so that he could catch Indian cricket. This was not the days when there was multiple channels, but he could catch Indian cricket. He was very fond of it. So he was watching the cricket match on a Sunday, and the new Bahu, the newlywed, came up to him and says, darling, I just want to tell you there's a little problem. When we climb these steps, the 2 steps to lead to our house, on the porch, the wooden plank is a little loose. And I'm afraid that with my high heels, when I come in and out, I might twist and I might get a sprain or something. So could you please put a couple of nails into that? See, because even if you're a millionaire in the US, These small things you have to do yourself because no carpenters and others were available. So this fellow was very annoyed with her. He says, can't you see I'm watching cricket? Do you think I have Acme hardware written on my head? You think I'm a carpenter? Go away. So she went away, and after some time she came and saw that there was the drinks interval. Nothing was happening on the TV. So she came during the drinks interval and interrupted him, says, darling, just one more thing. In the refrigerator which we have in our kitchen, the inner lining, that gasket which is there seems to have come a little loose. So, the things we put to chill inside beer and other things may not chill. So can you please just stick that gasket back into place? And again, he came out with, you think I am the refrigerator mechanic? You think I have got PD light written on my head? I make Fevicol. What's wrong with you? So she again said sorry, went and cried by herself in the side. Then she saw that it was a lunch break. She's saying, now there is a long break. Let me go and talk to him. So again, she went up to him and says, now there is lunch break. Can we, small thing, just can you change the bulb in the kitchen, the overhead bulb? There's a ladder. All you have to do is climb the ladder and change the bulb. I am afraid I will fall if I do that. So he was so annoyed. He says, you think I've got GE written on my head? You think I am a electrician over here? And you're annoying me. I'm going to go down to the pub below, down the road, and I'm going to watch the match over there. So he goes down to the pub and he's there for about an hour and a half. He realizes now that he's been a little too harsh on his newlywed. After all, they hardly know each other. It's just been a week since marriage. Maybe he shouldn't have shouted at her so much. So he comes back home after about an hour and a half. When he climbs the porch, he finds that the wooden plank is perfect. There's no creaking. There's no this. He goes into the kitchen, puts on the light. The bulb comes on beautifully, opens the refrigerator to grab a beer. The gasket is all fixed. Now he starts sweating. He goes to his wife and says, darling, exactly what happened while I was away? She says, I was so upset by what you said that I was sitting on the porch and crying away. And our kind neighbor, Mr. Smith, he came by and he asked me why I was crying. And I told him exactly what had happened and all the things that I wanted you to do and how you had shouted at me and fired me. And Mr. Smith was so kind. He offered to do everything for me and he did it. Now this guy is really sweating and saying, and what did you have to do for him in return? He says, well, he asked me to either bake him a chocolate cake or to have wild and passionate sex. And he says, what kind of a chocolate cake did you bake him? She says, you think I've got Bongini's written on my head? Bongini's is a cake shop in Mumbai. Thank you so much for your attention. We have an excellent session ahead of us. So I would stop right here because I want to give some time to the FBS AIOS webinar or Zoom meeting where we would like to interest all of you who are not yet FBS members to take part.